What if I told you that on a cold Christmas night, 5 children vanished from their burning home and were never seen again? Not their bodies, not a single trace. And what if I also told you that every clue from that night only deepened the mystery instead of solving it? This is the chilling real-life story of the Sodder family. A story that has baffled police, haunted investigators, and remains one of the most unsettling, unsolved cases in American history. It all began on Christmas Eve, 1945, in a small town near Fayetteville, West Virginia. George and Jennie Sodder, Italian immigrants, were celebrating the night with 9 of their 10 children. Laughter echoed through the house as the younger ones stayed up late, excited for Santa's visit. But before dawn, that joy would turn into a nightmare. Just after midnight, Jennie was startled awake by a strange phone call. A woman's voice asking for someone Jennie didn't know, then laughing before hanging up. Minutes later, she noticed the house strangely quiet, the lights still on, and the curtains open, unusual for her careful family. Then suddenly, around 1 a.m., smoke began to fill the hallway. The Sodder home was on fire. George and Jennie rushed to get their children out. 4 escaped with them, but on 5, Maurice, Martha, Louie, Jennie Irene, and little Betty were trapped upstairs. George tried desperately to save them, but the ladder that was always by the house was missing. His trucks, which had worked perfectly the day before, refused to start. The water barrel he planned to use was frozen solid. Within 45 minutes, the house was reduced to ashes. When the flames died, the horror deepened. There were no bodies. Not a single bone, tooth, or even ash that could prove the 5 children had perished. The local fire chief suggested the blaze had been so intense it had completely cremated them, but experts quickly doubted that. Even in house fires much hotter than this one, bones remain. In fact, the family later burned animal bones in a similar fire, and they never disappeared. The official investigation, however, was shockingly brief. Within just a few days, a coroner's jury declared the children dead, blaming faulty wiring for the fire. Death certificates were issued. The case was closed, but George and Jennie refused to accept that answer. And the more they dug, the stranger the story became. Witnesses began to come forward. One driver said he saw a man cutting phone lines near the Sodder home just before the fire. Another claimed he saw a mysterious man throwing fireballs at the house. A woman reported seeing all 5 children alive, peering out of a passing car on the night of the fire. Even stranger, months later, a waitress swore the Sodder children had come into her diner with 2 adults speaking Italian before being rushed out. The evidence inside the house was equally suspicious. A telephone repairman confirmed the wires had been cut, not burned. The latter was later found hard discarded in a ditch in Northcoast nearby. And most damning of all, a 1949 investigation by the Smithsonian Institution concluded that vertebrae found in the ashes were from a person much older than the missing children, and that the bones showed no sign of exposure to fire. Despite these findings, authorities refused to reopen the case. The police insisted the children were dead. The court saw no evidence of foul play, and the FBI, after a short involvement, declared the case beyond its jurisdiction. But for George and Jennie, this was far from over. For decades, they dedicated their lives to the search. They built a massive billboard on Route 16, showing the faces of their missing children and offered a $50,000 reward. They chased hundreds of leads, from alleged mafia involvement to sightings across the United States. In one mysterious twist, they even received a photo of a man in his 20s, claiming to be their son Louie, but nothing concrete ever surfaced. To this day, the Sodder children's fate remains one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. Were they kidnapped in retaliation for George's outspoken criticism of Mussolini and fascism? Was the fire a cover-up for a carefully planned abduction? Or did a series of tragic coincidences really destroy every trace of 5 young lives? We may never know, but one thing is certain. The Sodder family's desperate search for truth turned a house fire into a legend, a disappearance into a riddle, and a tragedy into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century.